Welcome to Cyber Morning. I'm your host, Christine Bejerasco, Chief Information Security Officer at WithSecure. And today, we're going to talk about why reactive security no longer works. Because if you think about it, our attack surface is just continuously expanding. We've had on-prem, we have cloud, we have different SaaS services, and now we have different AI on top of these different SaaS services. We have different AI agents that are talking to other AI agents. And last year, we have seen as well that with Traficom, there have been elevated levels of threats, even just in Finland. While DNA's information security study says that only 26% of organizations actually feel fully prepared. So something does not compute in this picture. Now, joining me today to unpack this and discuss what are the root causes and why we should go towards proactive security are Ansi, the Director General of our National Cybersecurity Center in Finland. We have Jussi, CEO of DNA, one of Finland's telco operators, and we have Nico, our very own sales director for the Nordics, to also give us the Nordic perspective for other organizations beyond Finland. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you.
And to our audience on site and online, welcome as well. You will have the opportunity to ask questions actually on the platform that has been given, and perhaps as well, like in our audience here on site, you'd have the opportunity to ask questions directly. So if you have anything, especially online, you can plug it into the system that is right in front of you. And if we have time later, we will take on those pictures. But let's begin. So reactive security in the age of AI agents. Why are we still in reaction mode? I mean, Ansi, looking at Finland's landscape, the organizations that we have in Finland, what do you think are the root causes of this still reactive security?
Yes, very good question, and of course we collaborate a lot with the private sector, for example, Finnish companies and organizations, and I think that of course it's many times kind of question of resources, how much you are able to put money or people to cybersecurity, and especially in small and medium-sized organizations, it's very challenging. Because we all know that once you have put, for example, firewall up and running, it stays there.
It's done.
It's done, and if you have limited resources or you don't have kind of continuous development processes or investments, it's many times, and especially in those cases we've been investigating during last years, many times it's this kind of old edge device. Nobody has really maintained it, and it's like no patches and very old versions, and that's really risk, and of course this is very reactive security way, instead of having a continuous development, thinking all the time how we can do better, and what is the threat landscape and how it's changing and stuff like that. So also, I don't know nowadays anymore if it's the question of understanding anymore, because what we do, we share lots of information how threat landscape changes, and what you should do, what things you should be interested in, and also in technological point of view. So I don't know if it's that understanding or awareness thing anymore, but I think it's many cases it's just resources.
And I think I can agree a little bit with that as well from discussions with different heads of security in different organizations, because there are different security budgets, and usually the budgets increase right after a compromise happens, which is unfortunate, but also very human. You see, I was sort of wondering as well regarding the 26% in the DNA survey, that these are the organizations that feel fully prepared. What does prepared mean, like in that context? What do they feel that what they have and what's missing?
I think when it comes to preparedness, it's the technology, it's processes, and it's people.
Mm.
And being prepared, it means that you need to be able to kind of secure the identity, the endpoints, networks, compute, storage,
All the layers.
applications,
Yeah.
business process, all the layers. And so 26%, even though it sounds kind of low, at the same time, if 26% says that we are fully prepared, I think it's still okay. But 70% of the ICT decision makers in the study are stating that they are worried about security in general.
Yes.
So from that point of view, I think it's the vector landscape is changing from the security point of view. So
Mm.
AI is coming, well, kind of both for in the internal tools, but also as the kind of attacking tool. At the same time, supply chains are more complex. So what are the kind of suppliers and people developing the SaaS applications, for example, where they are located, and so on. So there's a lot of things to kind of think when it comes to security.
Yeah.
And it's not only about kind of preparing, but it's also practicing and recovering, because
Mm.
it's I would argue that every organization will be attacked one way or another.
Yes.
And the question is that, okay, how do you kind of prepare and kind of you cannot minimize it completely. You need to kind of optimize it.
Yeah.
And then because ultimately if you minimize it, you need to spend kind of insane amount of resources, money and people on it. But how can you minimize it together or optimize it together with partners? And then how do you kind of manage the overall landscape in the
Mm.
optimal way, and also practice and be able to recover? Because ultimately if your environments are compromised or they are down for any reason, what is the recovery time, where the data is located, and so on. So there's a lot of things.
And the cost to the business. But
Yes.
that's actually interesting that you mentioned that organizations will be eventually attacked. And then we're talking about edge devices that are unpatched, because these devices, they are constantly probed the moment they get in, because they are not patched. It becomes an attack.
Yeah, I fully agree. And for example, what we see is that there's a lot of customers that are having, especially home Wi-Fi routers,
Mm.
which hasn't been patched. They've been kind of used for 5+ years.
It works, just
Yeah,
sits
yeah,
there.
and it's super easy for kind of attackers to take over, and then all the data that you're using at your home is actually going through it.
Yes.
And so a year ago or so, we decided, okay, for anything we sell, as for example Wi-Fi routers to home, there is always 3 years security, automated security patching.
That is great.
And so we try to find ways to minimize, because as an operator, we see ourselves as the first line of defense,
Mm.
because ultimately all the cyber attacks are going through ours or our two main competitors' networks. So whatever we can block together with the authorities, it means that then we are actually safeguarding the society.
And that is really a great thing, because I am also a firm believer that when it comes to security, although we give awareness, like as much awareness as we can to people, we should be shaping the path for them. Technologies themselves should be shaping a secure by design path
Yeah.
for people, and it's excellent to hear that. Heading over to Nico for a more Nordic perspective, do you feel like, in general, if we zoom up beyond Finland, are other organizations in the Nordics any different?
Well, I mean, in general, if you think about customers in Finland and Nordics, I think the situation is pretty similar overall. And I think the reason for like this reactive thing in general is, even though I agree with Anssi that there are a lot of customers who understand security quite a lot, but then there is also quite big portion of organizations that they don't really understand the threat landscape.
Okay.
And the main reason for this is that they don't actually have the resources, like Anssi said. Their focus is fully on basically on their core business, which is of course understandable, because that's the business that brings in the money. But the fact is that there is actually quite a lot of organizations still in Nordics who run, for example, basic EPP product still. And even though it protects you from some threats, it doesn't really protect you from like modern day attacks anymore.
I'm just wondering, like, what is the general sentiment in these organizations? Do they feel like they have been cruising behind these attacks and they would never be impacted, or they don't feel like they have anything that needs protecting?
Well, I think it's also two ways. So many companies think that they don't have anything to be protected, but
Okay.
then the other thinking is that we don't have anything that is valuable for other persons or other people or the attackers. But that's a false assumption. False assumption because
I'm hoping they think that their business is valuable as well,
yeah, of
enough
course,
to
but
be
they,
protected.
yeah,
Yeah,
of course,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. But I
Yeah.
think the main thing is that understanding of this changing threat landscape and having people in the organization to help these leaders in these organizations, it's a bit of lacking.
It's critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and most of the time we are only talking about cybercrime, like in general. So some of these threat actors that were essentially like ransomware threat actors, for instance, where their main purpose is financial, go to these organizations, try as much as possible to get as much financial value, which is commensurate to the level of attacks that they're doing. So, for example, ransomware threat actors, if they spend, let's say, million euros trying to attack an organization and then they get a ransom of 10 million, I mean, anyone can compute that the gross margins of that are pretty wonderful. So these are essentially like how attackers are also thinking of.
And one comment, I think we have, at least in Finland, we have very good information available, for example, at Traficom. I'm personally a big fan of this Kybersää, and I think everyone should go there.
Cyber weather.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
Everyone should go there every month to
Agree.
see what is the burning thing at the moment. So we do have this kind of information quite easily available as well.
And that's free. And it comes in Finnish and English.
Yes.
Yes. All right. So cybercrime, but then there are also nation-state attacks. And during last year, of course, there's a war going on in Europe, and there are different types of attacks that are happening across different infrastructure as well in Europe last year, some more successful than the others. And last January, we have even published here at WithSecure that our threat intelligence team have found a North Korean threat actor that has been exfiltrating anti-money laundering documents from a legal company in Italy. And of course, these are things that are continuously happening. But Ansi, in Finland, how did the situation look like last year when it comes to these nation-state type of attacks?
As we actually published already last year with Supo, Finnish intelligence service, together, it states that China and Russia are the main players still, and of course some other countries also, and many cases and most of the cases it's not our business to really try to track who's behind, but what we see actually is that and which makes things bit complicated is that because earlier it was pretty easy to say that okay, now it's China government or it's a state actor or organization behind the attack, but nowadays they have been building both in China and Russia those cyber attack or crime ecosystems in which state actors and criminal groups or hacktivists, they kind of form an ecosystem in which they produce services to each other. And if it's, for example, a phishing campaign here in Finland, it's many times hard to say who's actually behind that.
Okay.
And is it just a criminal group doing things, or is it actually a criminal group who is doing things for state actor, and vice versa? So they are quite good in that nowadays, mixing things together and confusing that way.
And it doesn't help that some states are actually safe havens for the cyber criminals where, like for example, in Russia, if you're not attacking locally, it's actually not a crime. And since it's very difficult to, if even possible, to cooperate with the Russian police, then there's really no prosecuting of those threat actors who may or may not be used by the government.
Yes, of course, because they have those ecosystems.
Yes.
So of course, those kind of ecosystems cannot work if there are these kind of legal aspects. But they are very flexible to use means and capabilities.
Yeah. And before I ask Jussi if he has seen a shift in sentiment as well, like beyond nation state crime to geopolitical risk. Because this is something nowadays that, like within the CISO circles, sometimes we joke about it, but it's not a joke when you feel like you don't have a business continuity plan that would work anymore. If some of these geopolitical risks actually like manifest, for example, we're having increased conversations that if the tensions, geopolitical tensions with the US escalate, do we honestly have a business continuity plan considering the technologies that we're using? But before getting Yusi's point on this, let's have a poll, like with our audience. Has your organization already analyzed the risk to your business if US geopolitical tensions escalate? Yes, no, not relevant for you. So please answer that question. And Yusi, so shift in sentiment, have you seen it? And if so, are leaders acting or are they waiting?
I feel that especially on the critical sector, I think companies are already preparing.
Okay.
And kind of the question that, okay, especially following the ICC judge case, where the kind of Microsoft tools were down and payment systems were down
Yeah.
for individuals. So the question is that, okay, could US shut down cloud, for example, if Trump wants to? And in theory, yes. In practice, I think that would have huge impact for kind of stock market, and for that reason, I think it's still unlikely. But at the same time, is it wise to do an analysis of kind of what are your dependencies on different cloud platforms and so on, and are you kind of what happens if the cloud is not available for any reason? And one of the weak points that people normally don't realize is that especially Azure AD, which is what you use for authentication to any application, if that is down for any reason, in that case, you're not able to access the other applications that you're using either. So those my thinking is that it would be wise to bring, for example, Azure AD and have local copy of it. So if shit hits the fan, you are able to still kind of operate and go to the applications, even if the applications are in your basement, and then having the kind of recovery plans in the cloud, but also if needed, have a local copy and ability to run it locally. Still, as said, the likelihood is very small, but kind of a few years back, nobody even thought about it. And ultimately, from the tech point of view, when it comes to security, for example, with Secure, yes, it's a Finnish kind of solution, and from that point of view, European solution. But when it comes to cloud platforms, are there real alternatives and AI capabilities? Are there real alternatives to US tech or Chinese tech as of now? And the answer is not really. And that's the tricky one. And even if you put it into your own data centers, you are still running it on Windows servers and SQL and so on. So from that point of view, we are relying on US tech because US technology is really, really good.
And while this is tricky, like across different areas as well in Europe, and we're going to get to Nico like in a bit, I'm sort of wondering whether if we invest as well now in Europe in some of these technologies that for us are still beginning, maybe they're not really on par or as good as, but they will get there if we continue to invest on them. Otherwise, the dependency will then continue to happen.
That is true. That is true. And of course, for individual companies, the struggle is that if you think about sovereign cloud, for example, where the capabilities, of course, exist.
Yeah.
But in those cases, and kind of especially when I was at Microsoft, kind of what we saw is that when you build kind of sovereign cloud to some country, typically the customers, even though the sovereign cloud capabilities are there, it's more expensive and there's less functionalities compared to public cloud. And in that case, kind of individual
Absolutely.
companies, when they try to optimize their business and have the kind of innovation capabilities and fast go-to-market and so on, they still typically prefer kind of public cloud. And public cloud is, from a technology point of view, really, really great. And my question, of course, for Europeans is that are the companies willing to invest into sovereign cloud type of capabilities if the price is higher and the capabilities are lower in the highly competitive businesses that all are in?
That's a very good question, and it's something that organizations as well as policymakers probably would need to think about on how to support that. But Nico, do you see yourself this sentiment as well happening in other areas of Europe?
Well, I think customers are thinking about the Europeanness,
Mm.
and people in general are thinking about this much more than previously.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this same topic in a road tour in I think it was September or something like that. And at that point, people were laughing that this is not like going to happen at all. Now the situation has actually changed quite a lot.
Mhm.
I'm with Jussi on this, that I don't think anyone will close down all the cloud services in Europe, but there might be some individuals that these kind of things are targeted, and I think companies should at least on some extent think about this. And there are some countries who are actually going towards this kind of direction as well. I think in France they are changing from Teams to local solution, and
Denmark has been looking
Denmark
into that
as well, and in Germany there are some states that are thinking about moving away from American stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
Just one comment to that. What we also see that of course those big players, global players, are following geopolitics and they see and know that the situation is changing, and what they do, they are of course they are reacting, and that's the way that they are actually building European sovereignty cloud services, trying to cut connections from the US. And I was talking with AWS Christmas time, and they actually published their European sovereignty cloud services, and they have their German-based company. And what they are telling is that all the maintenance personnel, everything just are Europeans, and like no connections or connections to US AWS is very small. But so of course that's business, and you have to follow the market and do things. So that would also a little bit lower the risk we are talking about. But of course it's still US company in that sense.
Yeah, and I think one thing there is that, like you said, the technology is really good that they are providing, and it's developing quite fast. So in that sense,
It's the technology powered by 2 decades of globalization. Yeah. Let's take a look at what our audience actually think if they have analyzed the risk to their businesses. So we have more than 50% on the no, or just a little bit of increase still. So a little bit 30% on the yes. And I'm curious about the ones that this is not relevant for them. But if you're one of those businesses who haven't really analyzed this yet, you're not alone. It seems that there are more than 50% as well of our audience that are there. But there is definitely increased numbers now of organizations that have woken up to this and taken a look. And perhaps this could also be a good push for our European businesses, that there is a market out there. And like from a consumer perspective, having more options in the market would definitely be very valuable for competition as well moving forward. But yeah, thank you for answering those questions, dear audience. Let's move to AI. No self-respecting cybersecurity discussion today. We'll skip AI. So let's talk about AI as well. And corporate leaders, definitely AI is one of those technologies that we don't see very often in our lifetime. It's like the internet. You just need to grab it, otherwise you'd be left behind. And different corporate leaders are seeing this, and we should definitely be experimenting with this. I mean, nobody should be left behind, not catching on AI. Let's put that on the table. But just like Internet of Things have brought out these edge devices that haven't been patched for ages, whenever technology is at a stage where there are organizations who wants to be first, who wants to win in the race, security features are typically not the ones that get released at the beginning. And therefore, the Harvard Law School Forum on Corporate Governance actually reported earlier this year that 72% of S&P 500 companies in the US have disclosed one material AI risk already. Therefore, AI, definitely we should experiment. A lot of valuable benefits could be for our organizations, but then we need to balance the risk and rewards. Starting with you, see, how are you seeing organizations balancing the risks and rewards of AI?
It's a great question, and it fully depends on the company. And of course, when it comes to AI, there are multiple kind of elements in the risk space. Of course, the kind of risk that, okay, is it creating security issues if you use kind of AI tools freely in the organization? At the same time, what kind of AI tools the attackers are using in order to attack your environment and even your kind of customers' environments and so on. So from that point of view, I think the landscape with AI is changing, and the technological development in AI is just so quick that kind of what is here today, 1 month later, the situation might be completely different, and then quantum computing is coming next.
Yes.
So there is from that point of view, in security, the risk landscape is getting more difficult all the time. At the same time, of course, AI can be utilized to defend. And quantum can be used to kind of defend as well. So from that point of view, I think it's the race that we are kind of running, but it fully depends on the company how they are prepared. And I would argue that bigger companies typically are prepared better, and the smaller companies not so well. And at the same time, then for the bigger companies, the biggest risk actually with AI on the in-house use is not that there are security issues, but what companies are missing the AI train because they don't know how to use it and they are too security concerned. So that's also something that you need to balance between the kind of risk and reward.
Absolutely, and I do see the same sentiment, like maybe something to help out, because most companies that are security conscious typically have an information security classification policy where they have things, for example, from publicly defined documents to confidential or even top secret. If there is experimentation happening, I mean, nothing is stopping them from experimenting with information that is not very critical for their organization and just playing around with it. I think that is something that, for example, like in our organization, has helped us quite a bit, especially at the beginning, because we are quite security conscious as well as we should as a cybersecurity company. But then we can't miss the train. So it is a train that definitely should not be missed.
It's the balance.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ansi, Finland is a heavily digital country. This is probably something that is on the National Cybersecurity Center's mind. So what AI-driven risks are you most concerned about right now? And do you see that there are organizations that may be underestimating the problem?
Yes, of course. As already mentioned, AI is also for us very important, and jumping to that moving train is like everybody's trying to do it somehow. How to utilize AI in business processes or even in personal assistant way. So, but actually two things, of course, from cybersecurity or security perspective are where is the data, like process it and stored when you use AI, and who has access to that data. So actually those two questions, and of course we have public services available for every organization or individual. You can use them every day, but you need to know that you don't have really good knowledge where the data is really processed and who uses it for the further purposes. So of course it's we have kind of market in which you can bring your own language model or something, put it into your isolated environment, for example, and do things with that. But this is pretty much same question or challenge as with the public cloud services.
Yes.
That in that way you didn't really get all the benefits if you have very limited environment. And I think that's a challenge also, because if it's very limited and the data AI is using is very limited, then the outcome is also quite limited, or it doesn't probably bring that much benefit. And in that sense, I think in my thinking, it's more like automated way to do things, not like really using AI. So those are the challenges right now. And of course, as mentioned already, how we can utilize, for example, AI in defending our infrastructure or Finnish society is very interesting and good question.
And I think when it comes to what can the organization afford, like for example, at the beginning, I mean, going back to information security classification, if you have something truly top secret, probably that is an area where you can afford not to have the most cutting edge AI that is deployed out there. And maybe this is the time that we are okay with just having this on-prem lower quality AI. But then most of the data that we have actually in our organizations are not really confidential, top secret. I mean, restricted up to a certain extent, but then most of them are internal. And if we feel like, okay, if this can be exposed out there, what can the organization really lose? So a little bit of a risk-based approach, probably based on the data that organization owns, could help organizations not miss this train, but also not sacrifice their crown jewels, essentially. And talking about this, of course, the EU also has the AI Act, and we have regulations in place as well on top of our AI environments. But shifting a little bit now to talk of regulations, I feel like the sentiment in European Union is moving past this peak of fragmented regulations, or maybe I'm just too optimistic about it, and moving towards more harmonization, which, to be honest, as a CISO, I would be like very happy, great, because at the moment, some of the challenges we're having is grappling with regional level EU regulations, and then you still have country level, and you still have sectors that have different regulations. Like for instance, which is really a challenge for, especially for European companies to operate. But in the context of security, we could have a more fundamental issue. For example, NIS2. Security compliance can either be a tick box exercise, and you can comply with NIS2 ISO 27001, just ticking the boxes and not having real security in the organizations in the first place. So you can keep auditors satisfied, but not have a real security uplift in the organization, which probably goes towards as well, like maybe that's the other side of the 26%. I mean, it's the rest of the 74% that are having challenges. Nico, from the organizations you have met, how many do you think are aiming for minimum compliance, like only tick box compliance versus those that truly use compliance to elevate their security? You don't need exact numbers, but kind of like,
well, I wouldn't have exact numbers,
yes,
but when, for example, I have a conversation with customers, it's not about ticking the box.
Okay.
It's much more about like, it's not necessarily about getting compliant either, but I mean to make sure that you have a business continuity, and especially the customers who are under this NIS2 regulation, they actually know really well that they are under it, and they actually also think about this from the perspective that they need to have capability of detecting, for example, malicious behavior,
real threats,
and also to act on those. So I think in that sense, the situation is actually surprisingly good. And this has changed, I think, during the past, I don't know, year and a half, quite a lot, because year and a half ago, I think there was like really little amount of companies who understood. Obviously, the actual law has been now valid, I think, almost a year, but still, I think this is actually really well, at least in Finland and Nordics. So with almost every customer, this is the discussion that how we can like ensure the business continuity. Of course, it ticks the box in the
yes,
regulation as
and
well.
that's
But
okay. Yeah.
But
But that is really great to hear.
Yeah.
Like if that is the case, because that would then be a real uplift, which probably moving towards Traficom as a supervisory authority in Finland. I mean, if organizations are going to be more religious about reporting material incidents, do you expect that NIS2 would increase the volume of your reports? And because today you are already getting quite a bit of this, like how do you forecast how much of that would change?
Yes, actually in Finland we have quite unique culture when it comes to the cooperation between public and private sector. And we have long history with that. For example, with telecom operators already 3 decades or something. We've been regulator and we've been working together to also to develop regulation together, so to say. So we have, and of course it's always based on trust. So in that sense, we get like 20,000 notifications each year from Finnish organizations, mostly from private companies, about the cyber incidents, and it's all voluntary based.
Okay.
And now we have had NIS2 regulation up and running, or national law up and running about a year now, and it actually hasn't changed that landscape at all, I would say. Of course, we get NIS2 notifications approximately 1 per day or something.
Okay.
But if you compare that 300 or 400 notification NIS2 notifications per year to those 20,000 voluntary-based notifications,
It's a drop in the ocean.
So
yeah.
what we really like to do is to keep that trust and cooperation and voluntary-based thing as it's been, and I haven't seen any sign that would change.
Okay.
Because it's still, if you do it mandatory based, it's you always think more that, okay, do we really need to notify or inform authorities, or if we just keep it in ourselves. But when we have this very low very tight connections, and like you can inform us for anything.
Yes.
And also the organizations who inform us can trust that in that we keep the things in ourselves, and we won't share it to the intelligence service or some other direction. So and that way we have actually a very unique thing also with the national cybersecurity awareness picture, because I believe that in Finland we have like top of the countries in Europe, because we get that information that much. We also have international connections and networks and communities from which we also get information, and in that way we can have a very good situation awareness what's happening in Finland.
I've actually experienced reporting as well, like with very low threshold. I mean, sometimes it can even be very scammy calls or URLs that have been used, for example, in scam mails, like very heavily. I mean, the great thing about the National Cybersecurity Center is that they sort of accept it all, and you don't really get penalized for anything. I mean, I don't know if even NIS2 would be, you would have kind of like the opposite effect of that, because it's already happening very smoothly and quite well.
Yes, actually, we would be more proactive in that sense also, that sharing information and telling organizations what are the, like for example, NIS2 requirements, which are the kind of practical things you should do, and that way. And also we have in Finland, we have a very culture also in that, as already mentioned, that we take like preparedness quite seriously. So even if you have this kind of new regulation, it gives you more requirements. I think, of course, it's maybe the first moment it's like, okay, what the heck again? But then everybody starts just working towards those, and that helps a lot. So instead of giving penalties, we would really like to be this kind of proactive and do things in advance.
Agreed.
And I think also that this also shows that many companies in Finland have capability to actually detect if there is something malicious there. So it's actually really good thing in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just wondering, like you see, with Finnish society, like from a digital perspective, already quite advanced when it comes to this. Do you think that these regulations truly still improved posture, or is this now more about just structuring appropriately what teams and organizations already do?
It probably depends on the company again heavily,
Okay.
and but in general, I think when it comes to regulation, there's always a saying that China is controlling, US is innovating, and EU is regulating, and so the regulations, I think those needs to be very clear what needs to happen. But at the same time, if you look about GDPR. It was actually kind of, even though it was painful for many companies when it was introduced, but at the same time, for example, the hyperscalers are using as a global standard
Yeah.
for kind of privacy.
Agreed.
And just the same with NIS2 and DORA and any other kind of this kind of regulation. I think companies would be stupid if they think that that's a tick box type of approach. I think that that's an opportunity to improve the security posture, and by that actually securing the business.
Yes, and get the right kind of budget
Yes.
for it. All right. Let's take a pause and take a look at the Q&A if we have, and by the way, our audience on site, you can ask questions as well. So let's see, what do we have online? We have Johan, who has asked how organizations can use cybersecurity regulations as a driver for more proactive security rather than treating compliance as a checkbox exercise. I think we have already answered that. There is a question which moves us to our next phase in talking about proactive security. But let's unpack it. Why not? What are the first steps for a company to move from reactive to proactive security? Maybe it's something we can take. Do you want to take a stab at it, Nico?
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not? Why not? For me, the first thing is that you understand what is the risk that you have. That's the first thing, and it's not about risk in general, but every company has their most valuable assets, right? So you need to understand what's the risk that is like towards these valuable assets. This is the first thing that you need to understand. The second thing is that, and you actually need to do it continuously. So it's not the thing that today you understand the risk and then after 2 weeks or 1 month or 6 months you just forget. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it evolves. Yeah. Evolves. And the second thing is that when you understand the risk, I think you need to have capability to also understand if there is something anomal happening in your environment. And you need to have capability of detecting these, and then of course acting on those. So that's basically a proactive security for me. But the first thing is that you need to understand what is the risk, and especially what are the most valuable assets that you have in the company.
So
and if I can add, it's not only about the cyber risks, it's also physical risks, it's insider risks, and so on. So you need to look at the kind of risk in a holistic way in order to become.
I mean, you can't separate them anyway.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So holistic risk management, essentially, and taking a look at what are your crown jewels. Anything you'd like to add, Anssi?
I totally agree. Of course, you need to follow how the threat landscape, for example, is changing, and what are the newest or the biggest threats from that sense, and how they could actually affect to your business or your systems, and doing that as you mentioned continuously and kind of, I think, kind of playing all kind of scenarios all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, and of course, because one of our job is to share that information, how threat landscape is changing and what kind of phenomenon or things we see today or tomorrow, etc. And according to that information, you should think that, okay, how is this actually possible to us, and how it could affect to our systems, and also being kind of active in that sense. You can also do kind of for example, like threat hunting, for example. You actively check your systems and try to find weak spots and
before
vulnerabilities and exactly
Yeah.
before anything happens or somebody's using your holes or vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Hey, one thing I would still like to add to this is that one part of this proactivity for me means as well that you train these situations if something happens.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because
Tabletop exercises.
exactly,
kind of
exactly,
Simulations.
exactly. Because when the situation is on, there is no time to lose anymore. So it's very important to train these different kind of scenarios, like Kansti said, that understanding the scenarios and testing these different scenarios. That what happens inside the organization if this happens?
I completely agree, because then the shock factor is no longer there, or at least it shortens that, and then people can respond much faster.
And you can basically work the first hours as an autopilot almost.
Yeah, and time is actually critical. So if you get compromised, the sooner you're able to react. That's the way to minimize the risk, kind of the impact ultimately. So from that point of view, it's super important to do the kind of practicing.
Anticipate that it's going to happen. And I think, like, going back to the edge devices as well, it's good to understand your exposures. Because, for example, like in an organization, it's quite different if you have a device that is unpatched, that is internal within your organization, and there is no path from any external device to get to that. That is much harder to get into, and you may even need like an insider risk to really compromise that. But if you have an edge device, it's out there, it's unpatched, open to the internet with its own IP address. Well, somebody is going to automatically probe that, and in the age of AI, maybe an AI agent is already living there. So that could actually be possible. But all right, we have another question: common hidden cost of reactive security, mid-market organizations. Okay, so this one is focused to mid-market. Do you feel like there are common hidden costs that the mid-market organization tend to underestimate? Hidden costs of reactive security.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I would say that yes. And for mid-market and in general for small and medium-sized companies, the big question is that you cannot afford to have everything. You cannot afford typically to have kind of big security operation centers and so on, which bigger companies have. So the question is, how do you partner with other companies like with Secure or DNA to kind of find solutions that somebody else is actually taking care of the task for you, which you are not capable of doing in-house, or you don't have the capabilities in-house?
Well, you probably don't have to if somebody would be taking care of that for you already.
Yeah.
So the costs are not hidden, but it's just that probably these organizations don't understand that there are even like one-stop shops that they can go for this that could help them with most of their challenges. And we have a final question here: can we win the AI race against threat actors? It feels like a loaded question for me, because if I take a step back, that can we win securing the internet race against threat actors, I don't think anybody is sort of like winning or losing. But the challenge with threat actors is that they are very opportunistic. But then whenever we raise the bar of security and it becomes too costly for them to attack, they actually don't. Because if it's too costly to attack rather than what is the benefit that they get from the attack, typical cyber criminals won't do it. And that's why typically it's after the low-hanging fruits, and whenever the low-hanging fruits are gone, it's the ones that really feel like they can benefit with huge ransom values, for instance, that get in there. So in a way, can we win? I would answer that let's continue to raise the bar when it comes to security of these new technologies. Then we will be more advanced than the threat actors, and most of the threat actors will be left behind when it comes to that. But it's a continuous journey. It's not a one-time thing when it comes to security. And like Nico said, the risk will keep on changing. Therefore, our defenses will need to keep on evolving as well.
And do I start?
Yeah, you can start.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that the cyber criminals are creative people, but so are the defenders as well.
Yes.
So in that sense, I think this will be a
It should be fun. If nothing else, there's never going to be a boring day.
Yeah, and maybe one thing to add, typically the weakest point in security is actually the people. is the employees, and I would argue that it's probably 20% of people that could click on any link, more or less, if the storyline is good enough. And so from that point of view, the cyber criminals are becoming more creative. So also building the capabilities in the organization and train the people to spot what is something that you shouldn't click or you shouldn't do.
Airline points are very tempting.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And I think that really is the thing, because sometimes it bothers me when like a lot of the default statement would say like people are the weakest link, and I would be, is it that they are weak because we haven't enabled them and we have kept them weak, and the technologies that we have are not being built secure by design? So, but they could actually be our biggest strength, and we can turn them into human firewalls if we appropriately not just train our people, but that build securities that, for example, like the 3-year routers that you were mentioning, if they are secure by design, people don't need to think about it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and just the same on kind of clicking links which you shouldn't click. That's something we can also prevent on the network level.
Yes,
and that's
exactly.
something we've
Absolutely.
done to some of the subscriptions. So that is possible, but at the same time, the cyber criminals are becoming super creative. I saw a case couple of months back when I got a LinkedIn message from a headhunter from the UK saying that, hey, I'm looking for a kind of board person to this kind of company, and it in a way sounded interesting. And then, hey, kind of you click on this link to kind of get the material, and in order to get it, you need to sign in with your company credentials. And ultimately, what has happened, and it was the real LinkedIn profile of a headhunter. So somebody has hijacked the LinkedIn profile, and few hours later, I got a message from the real headhunter saying that now I got it back, but it was kind of hijacked, and I lost it for a day or so. So they are super creative in finding ways to get ways to get into your environments, also outside of your kind of corporate environments.
Vigilance is key. Yeah.
Yes. Of course, this continuous fighting will go on, and at the same time that we are digitally setting things even more and more, there's also other side of the coin, and it's security, and I believe that we won't run out of our jobs.
No.
In that sense, what I many times say that making or doing cyber attacks, it's too easy. Because only thing you need is an internet connection, laptop, and bottle of or can of Coca-Cola, and you can sit in home and do things instead of, for example, old days. If you wanted to earn some more money, you went to rob a bank, and you really had to go there physically and do all kind of things to get money. But just using your laptop and typing little scripts there, it's way too easy.
Yeah, and you can do it to anyone, anywhere in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. I don't know if our audience here has any. Yes, please. We have a microphone. Yeah.
Yes. Hello, Katri Kolesnik from Sofigate, and I'm wondering if, when you're talking about these things, are you talking with similar people like you know, the security-aware people, the roles that have the IT security as they in the job description, or have you managed to extend the discussion to the business people? And as for background for this, I would say that I worked in my early career in IT, 11 years in information security. And when I left, I followed, let's say, 1 or 2 years of this cyber weather. Well, it didn't exist that time, but something like that. I was still curious. I wanted to know what's happening. Now for 10 plus years, I have no clue what's happening. And in a way, unless it's in the national newspaper or something like that, because it's just not there in my day-to-day work. Of course, I'm still a very security-aware person, but still, it's not like I have this discussion all the time. And well, there is actually a kind of jokey way of talking about this in my world. It is like, if you have an innovative idea and you don't want it to go ahead, then call an enterprise architect. And if still you want to continue with that, then call a CISO and you're sure that it doesn't go anywhere. So now I'm curious, have you been able to now to make all this very attractive to business leaders and business people? Or is it that you are still talking with people who have this security as in their role?
Can
I
we
think
start with
I
you?
think I
You
need
can
to take,
take.
I need to take this.
Yes.
I think, hey, typically when I meet customers, I meet either CIO or Chief Operating Officer or then CFO. And it's in the typical setup, it's CIO and CFO. So CFO is actually really interested about these topics typically. And these are the roles that I talk with. Obviously, we interact with all levels in the organization, but yes, from my perspective, this is a topic that especially the C levels want to understand.
And in my mind, the question is, what is the technological understanding of the C-level? Do they understand cloud? Do they understand AI? Do they understand cybersecurity? And it's not necessary to understand it all, but in that case, you need to be able to ask the right questions and do the scenario work in order to find the potential holes in your environment.
Exactly, and the topics we typically discuss with the C-level people, they are more on a high level that what are like the risk scenarios. We never go like in the deep technical thing because it's not relevant in that sense. They need to understand the big picture, and that's at least how we do it.
Yes, and when I started my cybersecurity career already over 15 years ago, I've seen a big change in that. That earlier it was like a couple of geeks in a dark room doing some fancy things.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's I believe in most of the companies it's actually on the leadership table, also in board table.
Board level discussion.
And also NIS2 is actually putting some requirements into that also, that it's actually responsibility of the leaders to take care of cybersecurity. So big change.
I completely agree. Now there is interest. I mean, of course, they don't want to know the nitty-gritty, but they want to know, are we compliant? How can we be compliant when it comes to the security stuff? And for our organization, how can we ensure that there is always availability of business? Because typically with leaders, I mean, if we have the security triad, this confidentiality, integrity, availability, the availability aspect is the one that is most important to them. But for example, if you suffer a massive DDoS attack, I mean, something could go down, that the business will not be available anymore, and that matters to them. So talking about the things that matters from a business perspective seems to open up the interest in discussions for the non-security leaders, at least. All right. We have 2 minutes left with our time, and I was wondering if there is one sentence that you can leave our audience here when it comes to how can an organization move from reactive to proactive within 90 days. Quick one, lightning. What would it be? Nico.
Start understanding the risks.
Thank you. Jussi?
Build the capabilities and find right partners.
Thank you.
And
Anssi?
follow the changes in threat landscape.
Thanks. And as for me, know your external exposures. That's all we have for today. If your board loves benchmarks, by the way, we have a benchmark tool, a free benchmark tool that you can see from here. Please ensure that when you actually click this QR codes, that they have the same link as the one below. So validate them. That helps with security awareness. So take a look at this, benchmark your organization against other organizations as well. And thank you for our audience on site and online, and for our 3 gentlemen here. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Cyber Morning.